Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Spiritual Spotlight series. Today, I'm joined by Lindsay Stanton. She is a coach. She is a coach trained in intuitive Reiki, somatic therapy, and she specializes in working with those who are experiencing grief and trauma. She is also an author, a speaker. Her book's name is The Enduring and the Everlasting. It's a detailed account of her lived experiences with grief, receiving signs, and ultimately building an in-depth communication system with her husband on the other side. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here. I'm really happy you're here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's such a big, important topic.
Yes, ma'am, it is. Yes, it is. And yeah, we could honestly just talk about that the entire time, why it's such an important topic, but we're gonna talk about you. So your book, The Enduring and Everlasting, delves into your personal experiences with grief and your journey towards building a communication system with your husband on the other side, which I kind of liken that to a psychic dictionary. Can you share maybe a pivotal
A
moment
really
that
good way to say it. Sorry to interrupt you.
okay. Could you share a pivotal moment that inspired you not only to explore your own grief, but to also turn your experiences into a resource to help others navigate their own grieving process?
That's a really great question that I have not been asked yet. It was 100% guided. So I think, anytime we're truly in flow and channeling for especially, from the other side,
Yeah.
we kind of just go along for the ride and realize afterwards. I was at a launch event this past weekend in Chicago for my book, and I was talking to somebody at the event, and I was saying that the night that the book went live on Amazon was literally, and this is going to sound funny, but literally the first time I thought to myself, oh my gosh, like everybody's going to really know me and know us because I put it all out there. Like it was so channeled and
Yeah.
just so in flow
Mhm.
that I literally didn't even think about the details of, all the vulnerable and personal aspects of our lives that I was sharing in the book.
Right.
So it was, I mean, I got signs pretty early on about that the book was going to be a thing and that it was going to lead into other things, other
Yeah.
modalities and ways of helping people to do things differently. And I got that information both directly through, dream visits, messages that I get from my husband, but then I also got them validated through mediums, where it was popping up like randomly, like I would get like these random mini readings from people. Like I was just like, it wasn't even like necessarily that I had scheduled a reading with
Mm-hmm.
a medium. It just would happen where a medium would be in proximity to me and tell me, this, and this. And like, yeah, oh yeah, I already knew that, but thank you for the validation, So yeah, I was 100% in flow. It was not like I sat down and
Right.
strategically planned it.
So let me ask you this question. Now the book comes from the passing of your husband and how you've kind of communicated with him and how you've gone through your grieving process. How
Mhm.
long has it been since he's since passed?
Yeah, so he passed in October of 2020.
Okay, so it's been a while. Okay,
Yeah, a
and
little
then
over 2 years. And
how?
for anybody that's going like in grief, like that is
Yeah.
not a while. Just
No, 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 no. I'm sorry.
yeah.
It's
I
like
mean,
it's a pocket of time.
yeah, and grief does this weird thing, right? Where it's like like in some ways it feels like it was yesterday, in some ways it feels like it was a lifetime,
Yeah.
like it's just does this, it does a weird thing to time in general. So I did just want to say
No, no, no.
that.
You're 100% correct, and it's yes because I know you mentioned before that you listened to a previous show of that I had in regards to terminal illness and dying and whatnot, and I speak about my brother who committed suicide, who
Mhm.
probably like 6 or 7 years ago, and it does feel like yesterday, or it
Yeah,
feels like I don't even remember him. Sometimes it's a
yeah,
very interesting flow of time.
yeah.
So I do appreciate you in saying that for sure. So let me ask you this. I do have other questions, but I kind of want to talk a little bit more about kind of your husband coming to you. When he
Mhm.
first started visit, let me ask you this first. Sorry. There's a lot of energy coming in, guys. So Rachel's trying to capture her words. Um, were you intuitive prior to you channeling this book and prior to your loss of your husband?
Yes, but I would say like it's on like mega steroids now. Like, I mean, it just, whew, because he is and was everything. Like, I mean, my best friend, my 100% my soulmate. I know now it's like I have total validation that he has been with me multiple times throughout multiple lifetimes. So I think, I have received signs from other loved ones that have passed, and definitely communication, but this is like so next level.
That is very interesting. I'm not sure if you've ever read anything by Maureen Saint Germain. She talks about like 5D consciousness and connecting with your higher self and whatnot. She likens ascension when people have heart hurts. She calls it rocket fuel for ascension. So when you
Yeah.
suffer a massive traumatic event, the loss of somebody near and dear to you, your soulmate, like that just up leveled you. Not that you wanted it to be up leveled,
Right.
but it definitely happened for sure.
No, 100%. And I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm not familiar with her work specifically, although I'll definitely have to look it up. But I have heard that before.
Yeah.
And I definitely recognize now, it took me a while to process it to get to the point, but I definitely recognize now that without this huge of a loss, like it had to be him, because I wouldn't have gotten to the level. It just wouldn't have impacted me had it been anybody else to the level that it has impacted me. And I also recognize now that with our greatest pain lies our greatest love and our ability to be open. So it's like, it is this really interesting duality where I feel like you have to be able to hold both, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. You're right. It's like you can appreciate all the beauty and the love and the everything, the highs, but then it's like all of this, it's almost like having to pull it together to integrate it to balance. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be an interesting process that you're probably, like you said, you're still going through, but
Yeah.
thankfully you now help others with grieving. And it's such, I'm not trying to make light of it, but it's such an important thing to help others that are grieving, because I'm sure you encounter this now. A lot of people feel very alone in a grieving process. Have
Oh,
you found that?
100%. And some of the things that people who have not dealt with grief say, and it's not intentional, but it makes you feel just so much more alone. So I think being in community with people that really get it, who've been through it, who understand it, is so important, so that you don't feel alone. Because like there's this instant connection and just ability to go deep with people who've been through it that you just aren't going to get unless you've been through it, honestly. So, and I think it's really important, because otherwise you can feel really overwhelmed, and it almost layers on top of itself. Like you've got the grief plus, this horrible feeling like you're in this dark cave by yourself. And it is so, and that's why it's so critical to build resources. And that's why the book was so important for me to get out there, because I wanted to be able to provide resources that haven't been provided in a way they haven't been provided as well. So I pulled together, just out of trial and error of my own lived experiences, the modalities, resources, and tools that worked the best for me.
I think that's a beautiful thing. I actually just recently did an interview with a lady who lost two of her family members in the Santa Barbara water slides. And it was interesting how she said like certain modalities work for her and certain didn't. So I appreciate the fact that you're bringing in a holistic approach and bringing in different modalities, like, hey, try this, try that, try this. A lot of
Yeah.
people are moving towards a more, I feel like, a more holistic approach, when it comes to grieving and trying on new things. When you're suffering, you're probably willing to try just about anything.
Exactly. And that's why somatics resonated with me so deeply, because you feel in your body whether or not a certain tool or modality is going to resonate with you. And I knew, like, I mean, I could talk about a topic of a potential option that would help me and know almost immediately if it was something that I was feeling called to explore
Mm.
further, or if I was like, oh nope, that's good. That might be for somebody else. That's not for me.
That is actually leading us into our next question. Somatic therapy is a unique approach that integrates mind and body to address emotional and psychological challenges. How has your training in somatic therapy influenced your methods for supporting individuals dealing with grief?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, layering it in, oftentimes, what sits alongside our grief
Mm.
are, ruminations, regrets, and ultimately underlying traumas, and it could be related to the person that passed, or it could have absolutely nothing to do with the person that passed, but they're things that
Mm.
we brought into relationship with that person that can then act as triggers or amplifiers of the dark state that we can go into with our grief.
Yeah.
So once you can kind of dive into and move through some of those, it can really help transmute your grief into more of ability to experience joy and connection.
Nice. Now, do you layer in practices such as visualization, journaling, and maybe movement into
Yes.
okay, tell
Yes,
us more
yes,
about that.
yes. 100%. Yes. Movement. And I literally have talked about with people that I worked with the physical act of walking, just moving, literally putting one foot in front of the
Mm.
other can be such a profound way to start to move through your grief. And as I know it sounds super simple, but the fact of the matter is like that physical representation of moving through it
Mm.
does resonate at both a body and a mind level. So it makes a huge difference. And it's something that I guess, intuitively felt right out of the gate. And I mean, after Roger passed, I walked all the time. I mean, I still do, but
Right.
would walk all the time, and just, it would help me just process, and which gave me a pathway to be able to move forward,
Mm.
so it was a physical representation of, the mental work that I was doing as well.
Absolutely. I am a firm believer that you have to be able to move the energy. Energy gets stuck and stagnant in our bodies, whether you're experiencing grief, joy, happiness, and we have to make sure that we're moving our body to kind of move that energy along and to, like you said, to
Mhm.
transmute it into something that's more useful in the future, for
Mhm.
sure.
And plus, if you're layering in movement in nature,
Mm.
then you're, opening yourself up to connection too. So I love being outside. And for me, that's a fertile ground to be able to connect.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. So when you're going on these walks and you're processing your grief, and like you said, you're out in nature, you're getting these hits, these intuitive hits. Anything that you might be able to share then when you're having those moments that you're like, "Ooh, gotta do that." That's very profound.
Um, yeah, I've experienced so many downloads, and usually it is when you're in kind of that, I don't want to say meditative state, because it's not when you're
Yeah.
meditating specifically, but like when you're in that flow state where you've
Yeah.
calmed your egoic mind, and that could be walking, that could be driving, at times of silence when we're not like letting all the external voices overload us are such a good time to receive downloads. I've received honestly so many, and both from Roger as well
Mm.
as from, God, universe, source,
Of course.
the angelic realm. Sometimes we don't even know, but it's a very clear message. When I get them, they tend to be like one sentence.
Mm.
If like maybe it's not even a full sentence, but they're very specific. So I've also experienced beyond detailed, I mean, it was like I was a real experience, visualizations with Roger, as a result of like being in flow and just going on a walk. And
Yeah.
my stepdaughter was getting married, and I literally saw us dancing at the wedding and got to experience the entire thing, which just, I mean, I was overwhelmed with joy. It took me to a place that I could go back to then. And I wasn't feeling like at her wedding that I'd missed anything, because I'd had that experience with him. So they can be really big. They can be really profound. They can be small, they can be subtle, but they can also be really big and profound.
I like the fact that you brought up the fact that it maybe not you're in a meditative state. It's like you said, you're kind of like you're in a flow state. Your mind's quiet, and then you get these pockets of insight. And
Mhm.
I get mine in the car. So I like that you brought that up because I'm always like, what? Huh? Excuse me, what?
Well, that started, that is kind of the start of this journey for me. So I was in the car when Roger was in hospice on the way to him and got a download, very much a download from the other
Oh.
side, that this wasn't the end, that this was just the beginning, and that
Mm.
we were always going to be together, and that we would be able to be in communication together once he passed. What that gave to us was a conversation. So as soon as we were together, we had that conversation, and I'm convinced he had the same download because as I was telling him the information that I had
Yeah.
received, he was already knowing it. It was, you know, when you're having a
Yes.
conversation with somebody
Yeah.
that already knows something, I mean, he was just in total lockstep and was like, absolutely. So I'm convinced he had the same download. But those conversations, so to the episode that you did recently about, you know, your relative that
Mhm.
is, you know, terminally ill, I would say, and anyone out there listening who is in that position, have those conversations, because it does facilitate, I'm convinced it facilitates the opening of the pathway. It
Mhm.
doesn't, it's not that you can't do it without that, but I think it does help make it a little easier. I think it does crack the door open a little bit more, and prepare you for the next stage. And I'm forever thankful that we had those conversations.
I like that idea, but let me ask you a question. What if the person that has a terminal illness doesn't believe in that any longer?
They
Like,
will. They will. I mean, at
you know
some
what I
point, I
mean?
feel like, because they start to get,
Yeah.
they start to, once they start to transition, it's, if they're terminally ill, they start to
Yep.
transition. They'll get experiences before they actually transition. Maybe they're still in the kind of fight, you know, mode where they don't want to even register what's happening.
So true.
But I think as you get further in the process, I know, like, the people I've been in proximity
Mhm.
to have passed, not even just, you know, close to me, but there's, you can feel their soul get closer to the other side. And I
So
think
true.
that's when if it's somebody that's resistant to those conversations, I think that's when the opportunity is there to have those conversations.
I like that idea. And I totally agree with you. I know as we move along and things get, there's going to be, it's like, like you said, it's like open up the pathway. That's a beautiful way to put it. And then like also, yes, you lost the physical aspect of your husband and him as, living and breathing, but thank goodness you're able to communicate with him in spirit. So there's a layer that you're able to communicate with him that must bring you some form of peace.
Oh my gosh, yes, it is. I mean, it's amazing. It gives me something to look for every day. And, you know, when I am sad, because of course, you know,
Yeah.
there's times when, you know, I'm tanked like anybody else going through it. But I try to remind myself, and that's one of the reasons. I know you briefly brought up journaling. That's one of the
Mhm.
reasons I journal all my experiences, because when you are kind of in those lowest of the lows, it gives you something to go back to, that, you know, you can put yourself right back in when you received that sign or that message or
Yeah.
that dream visit. So I love to have that as a resource for myself. I've created it for myself because it's just a reminder that he is always with me, even
Mhm.
if he's not physically here. And honestly, it's actually less restrictive. You know, if you think about it, we get to spend more time with each other now because
True.
there's no rules. He can't, you know, he doesn't have the physical restrictions that
Yeah,
he had before. He can always be there for me. So that's pretty amazing when you remind yourself of that.
definitely. So your work involves helping others through community and individual support on their grief journey. Could you share maybe a powerful example of how your coaching and guidance has made a significant impact in transforming someone's experience with grief?
Yes. Honestly, some of the messages I've gotten back after talking to people, working with people, are just, I mean, they give me such amazing joy and just feeling of purpose,
Hmm.
because it can be so life-changing for people. There's one woman I've worked with in one of the communities that I'm a part of, who was experiencing really bad pre-grief and not able to really be as present as she wanted to be with her husband or her kids. And I know it can impact people differently, and some people really struggle with pre-grief. And we were able to do some work, and I shared some lived experiences of mine with her. And at the end of the day, she came back to me and told me that not only had I hugely shifted her relationship with her husband now and going forward and the way she's thinking about things, but also shifted how it's going to impact her children, which was like just amazing.
I have to tell you, I have been a nurse for over 18 years, and I worked in hospice and everything and death and dying. I have never once heard someone call it pre-grief. And that is so profound. And as you say it, I'm like, I'm in pre-grief. This is what I'm in. And it is interesting how you like how you don't want to communicate with people about things. That's oh, I love this. I mean, that's fascinating. I know it's a simple term, but it's a profound thing, pre-grief,
Yeah.
and how do people it's almost like you're getting ready to grieve and you're grieving, but you're not, like
Yeah. And similar to grief, it is a very much an individualized experience. Some people are pretty handicapped by it, pretty stymied by it, and they have a hard time. They're stuck. It's like they're in quicksand.
yeah.
Other people, I mean, I thankfully I didn't experience it. I'm thankful for that, because, I do feel like I think it's important to do work around your grief if you're experiencing pre-grief, because it lets you be more present in the moment. And I think it can help you to eliminate some of the challenges that you might have later, so that, it's like one less box in the regrets section, right? That you have to work your way through. So
it's almost like building up your endurance. Like I like how you say that. It's like, okay, we're getting ready. We're
mhm,
preparing.
mhm.
That's a really that's
Yeah, and just being present in every single moment. I mean, that's the one thing that I know everybody, experiences loss differently, and some losses are, very sudden, and you don't have the opportunity to have those conversations. But when you do, like, to be able to experience those things, like one of the things that we did, we would stay up all night talking all night long, like we did when we were first dating. And it just was like, it was magical. It was so beautiful. And to be able to come back to, it was like coming back to the beginning,
yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. In addition to being an author and a coach, you're also a professional speaker who's engaged in various media interviews. With such diverse range of topics you discussed, how do you find that in your experiences with grief and spirituality intersect with the broader conversations that you may have had?
That is a really great question. And I will tell you, I don't hold back at all now. And it is really interesting. So I'm in a lot of professional groups, a lot of women in C-suite groups, and I don't hold back at all. I will talk about spirituality and my experiences, my communication pretty much out of the gate with people. And what's really interesting is it gives people permission to have the conversation they want to have. I will tell you, I pretty much never get somebody like, oh, it is always like a opening of a flower, like giving them the opportunity to have that conversation that they've been really wanting to have. And it also creates deep, meaningful relationships like out of the gate. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've become very close friends with because first conversation, I, spoke my truth. So I think people get nervous about having those conversations, but I've been, because there's no reason for me to hold back anymore. I mean, I feel like I've kind of seen everything now. It does, it just creates this ability for people to be deeply authentic and have conversations that they've been wanting to have that they're resistant to having. I've definitely had people share with me that they've had signs, communications, and experiences that they've been too nervous to share with others, but me sharing it and being vocal about sharing it, like, kind of gave them permission of sorts to be able to have those conversations, which is so great. Because if you think about the power of one person and the multiplying effect if you're able to reach that one person and let them feel okay with the experiences and let them really enjoy the beauty. I mean, it's amazing. It's phenomenal what our loved ones can do for us on the other side. So
that is 100% true. I love the way that you just put that. And I also, a lot of people are afraid to speak their truth and speak how they're truly feeling. And I love the fact that you're okay, guys. I'm opening up this gate, and I'm gonna hold space for you. And just as I'm speaking my truth, you can speak your truth as well. And it's a ripple effect of healing, it sounds like.
100%.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So your book, The Enduring and Everlasting, if anyone wishes to purchase it, where are the places we can go get it at?
I mean, all places that sell books. Yeah. Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any of your normal suspects. My website, thesoulrevival.com.
And that is also where you sell your coaching packages and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and one more time, what was that website?
Thesoulrevival.com.
Oh, I like that title. I like
Thank you.
that. So one more question. If somebody maybe is experiencing grief, sadness, loss, and like you said, doesn't have the tools, maybe he's not equipped to handle it, what is a piece of advice that you can give to somebody who's, trying to get through this to get to their side?
Yeah, I think, finding a community that resonates with you is really important because that gives you kind of a foundation to be able to navigate other, resources. But without that, I feel like it just gives you confidence and comfort to be able to explore more. And also, you can, very much collapse time around your process because other people might have had experiences that really resonate with you that you want to check out. I've learned so many different things in different communities I've been part of. I've sucked up so many different books on, and not even necessarily spirituality. One thing that's
Right.
helped me is anything that's kind of self-help or self-development related, because like Mel Robbins' book with 321 was one of the first things I did because it goes back to that movement
Yeah.
conversation. Just get yourself
Yeah.
going,
The 5 second rule.
yeah, exactly. Don't
Yeah.
just sit in the grief, because our emotions are meant to be 90 seconds, so, and then we can process through it. But I would be really open to non-traditional methods. Like, don't just think like, oh, you have to go specifically to like a therapist or counselor that's, specializes in grief. To me, traditional counseling did not resonate. I didn't do it. I knew it wasn't going to work for me. Like, I felt it at again, back to the somatics at a body level.
Right.
So I would say like really tap in. It's your time to create space for yourself and to listen to yourself and tap into your intuition. So really do that. And what's the first thing that comes across? Because spirit's going to bring you stuff too. I mean, I've had so many things, books, podcasts. I mean, literally show up in my mailbox out of nowhere. I mean, just all I have like so many stories.
I
So
love that.
yeah.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness. I love that. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on the Spiritual Spotlight series. I really recommend anyone and everyone, please go and get her book, The Enduring and Everlasting, because we're all going to be going through grief sometime in our life. Thank you again, Lindsay. I'm so happy you were
Thank you for
here.
having me.